Hello, everyone. This is Coach Mike Ronchetti. I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. It's my pleasure to welcome Brad Bolinger to the show today. Hello, Brad.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Fantastic. Great seeing you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's start with introducing yourself. Tell us a bit about your personal story, kind of where you're born, where you live, maybe about your family, some hobbies. And I always like to ask about the funny story in life that everybody wants to tell about you or about yourself. Tell us
Sure,
about
sure. Happy to do so. Thanks for having me. So I was born in Bluffton, Indiana, and at the age of 5, we moved to Warsaw, Indiana. So I spent the rest of my years through high school in Warsaw, attended Warsaw Community High School, and then went to Franklin College, south of Indianapolis. Um, Today, I actually live back in Warsaw, Indiana.
you.
Probably would have lost a bet if you would have asked me if I'd ever moved back to Warsaw. But about 6.5 years ago, my family and I moved back to Warsaw, and so my two daughters have gone through the same school system that I went through, which is kind of cool. And again, not something I planned. I'm married, been married for 23 and a half years. And we've got two daughters. As I said, I've got an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. So I've got a freshman in college and a junior in high school. So we're in that adjustment phase of having only one under roof and trying to have phone calls to live vicariously through the older one as she's adjusting to college. So from a hobby standpoint, I I'm a huge college football fan. We may talk about it later, but my first career in life, I was a college football coach, and
Yeah.
since I stopped doing that, I just became the biggest fan. So during that season, I either travel to games or I can be caught glued in front of the TV from the time games on until they're over. Additionally, I we are fortunate enough to live on a lake, and so I like to do some boating and I like to work out and hang out with family and friends, and that kind of takes up any of the time I have that's not taken up by the business.
Wow. Okay, so what's that funny little story?
So I think I'd heard you ask before about the funny story that your family likes to tell,
Yeah.
and this is kind of silly because of the coaching background. I kind of approach everything as from a coach's perspective, and so there are certain things that I tend to repeat over and over, and especially when my girls were little, there were two phrases that I often repeated to them because I thought they were important. And today, if I say those or anyone hears them and they're around, I get a big eye roll and a big chuckle. So when they were really little, not really little, but school age, um, every time they were leaving to go to school, I would tell them be a leader. And so when they were little, they thought that was cool. And as they got older, and I would say it again, they'd turn around long enough to roll their eyes and chuckle at me. And then the other one was anytime something was difficult, I've always told them there are two things in life you can control: attitude and effort. And if you do both of those better than everybody else, you're going to be way ahead of the game. But the attitude and effort thing I can throw out there in lots of settings, and they will roll their eyes, laugh at me, and poke fun at me. So
Well, you're a man true to your word as well as your history, so that's good for you. So fantastic. So kind of moving forward with our conversation today, business background. Tell us a bit about how this business came about, and at what point do you have the confidence that you could actually run your own business?
yeah, so I've owned this business about 5.5 years, and I was really in the corporate world for 20 years previous to this. I'd been in the medical device world, started as a salesperson, and moved my way up to a regional manager, ran a state, and then the last job running sales for the country for one of the very large medical device companies. And what I found was as I moved up within those companies and within bigger companies, it got harder and harder to make decisions that were truly in the best interest of the employees and sometimes the customer. And that's just the nature of big companies. I think that's not to disparage any of the bigger companies, but what I realized was if I wanted to truly be able to do things in the best interest of employees, of customers, and not have to make decisions on 3-month increments because of financial earnings reports, that business ownership was a way to do that. So I started looking for a company that wouldn't require me to move my family again, and would allow me to do those things, and found the Daltons. And so about 5.5 years ago, jumped into this. Um, you asked me what gave me the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
I'd had thoughts about doing it for a lot of different years, and had looked at things that I could do while also having my day job.
Mhm.
I've looked at rental properties. I've looked at um, buying franchises that someone else could run. Um, but when I decided to leave the corporate world, um, that was a decision that I probably just made over a lot of time thinking and talking with the people that I trusted. Buying the actual company, though, it's funny. I can remember the moment that I really questioned it, and I'm fortunate that I had a group helping me with diligence that I really trusted, that have worked on these types of transactions a lot before, and we closed on the business in about a 5-month period from the time we first met through diligence, and I can remember I think it was at the end of maybe month 3, I was in a meeting with those advisors of mine that were, trusted advisors, and the main guy, I just remember looking at him and going, "Hey, John, you haven't given me a reason not to do this yet." Kind of with a nervous, "You haven't given me a reason." And I had made a list when I started looking at companies of what the company needed to provide for me and what I thought I could provide for it, and a pretty big checklist. And I remember him holding up the list. He said, "Is this still your list?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Then I'm not going to give you a reason not to do it." And that's what I needed to hear at that time. When you ask what gave me the confidence to do it, it was I was always confident in myself, but having someone that had been a part of many transactions like this before, had dealt with a lot of smaller business owners, tell me that, hey, this is the one that fits you if this is really what you want.
Wow, I hadn't heard this very often from people explaining their process the way you did. So, Brad, I'm going to change this next question up a little bit. Obviously, I want you to tell us a little bit more about the Daltons, what it does. But could you also go back to, if you memorized at all, a couple of those elements off your list of what you're looking for? Because you're kind of in a unique position for us is to find somebody who had comfortable life. You knew you wanted to do something different with it, and yet you had a pretty strict requirement of what that would look like. But yet the world's the oyster. I mean, anything goes. Could you just
Yes.
share a little bit of that about how you with the Daltons? I mean, without getting into confidential stuff, of course. But
Sure, sure. So first off, I was kind of industry agnostic. That part didn't matter to me as much. I felt like I wanted to buy a company that was still being operated by the founder, because I felt like it was important to be able to get all of the history and learn from that person that founded the company. I wanted it for me. I wanted to not have to move my family again. That one's just a me thing. It had to be big enough to replace a certain amount of income for me, because I wasn't a 25-year-old starting a company. I'd been successful, I had a family, and so it had to financially do some things for me. It had to allow me to truly, no matter what the business was, feel like I had a team that I could develop, and again, that I was able to make decisions that made sense for those people and for the customers. Sometimes in spite of what it did to the immediate P&L. And again, that's because I felt like I got to a point in big companies where you couldn't always do that. And as a business owner, I can make a short-term decision that may hurt the financials of the company, but that I know is the absolute right decision for an employee, for a customer, or for a direction. So those were some of the bigger things that were really important to me as I looked to get into a company. And I really didn't want. I think there are a lot of people that have success with these, but I wasn't extremely interested in a franchise. And that the reason for that is, to me, a lot of the independent businesses that have been built, especially if they're still run by the founder, they've found a way to build a really good business that's profitable, but many times they may not have some of the operational efficiencies that you would start out with in a franchise. And that's one of my strengths, is to build processes and efficiencies. So I thought that was an area that I might be able to improve upon a business that I came into.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with that. In Dalton's case, what do they do?
Yeah, so we do chemical vegetation control. And generally, when I say that, I get a little bit of a head turn because that still doesn't describe what we do. But if you think about what your lawn care company does to keep weeds out of your yard, they spray your yard. We spray for weeds, for brush, for invasive species on a very, very large scale on rights of ways. So our customers are county highway departments, state departments of transportation, rural electric co-ops, and we've got big pieces of equipment, and we're spraying herbicides on roadsides to control unwanted vegetation. Again, not dissimilar to what your company that may treat your lawn does, but on a very, very big scale. We work currently in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio. And we're a seasonal business. So our people are working their tails off between about the middle of March and the middle of October. So pretty unique business.
That is a very unique business. I also applaud you for seeing the insight of how a 24/7 type of job that you had before can be suddenly more seasonally balanced and still have a good life wealth mindset. That's really great. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks. For everyone listening, check out the company in the link and the description that we give there, as well as the comments. Please comment on the LinkedIn about you watched it and your thoughts about the interview process. Appreciate that. So let's move on to a little bit more about people side of things. Can you share a story of where someone who pushed or inspired you along the way that you could do it and the impact that person had somewhere in your life or even recently or whatever?
Yeah. So again, one of them I already gave you the example, is when I needed someone to give me a little push, and not so much say I could do it, but say, if this is really what you want, then this is it. Go get it. That was pretty pivotal. And I had a lot of other examples. I've had a lot of other examples in my life. Quite honestly, several of them have been doubters, telling me the things that I couldn't do, and several of those things have motivated me, whether it was truly to take the leap and leave corporate America and buy a company, or when I decided to get out of coaching football, to find a way into the medical device world. So I guess I've had a lot of people inspire me through positive talk, and several through my time who have underestimated and doubted me, and that generally fuels me pretty good.
We all are feeling fueled by that sometimes in our life, and I'm happy as an entrepreneur. I almost find it daily.
Yes.
It's a little bit of a mental thing. After a while, it becomes in our DNA of, hey, don't get too cocky. Go for it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's fun. So overall, now you've been a business owner 5 years. So, what's your biggest learning that you've had in that 5 year period?
Yeah, so I would say when I first bought the company, I was concerned with how we would grow and whether there was enough business out there to go get to grow and could we go sell new jobs. And really what I learned pretty quickly is there's a lot of business out there, but the people side of things in my business were the biggest constraint. Now, I would say that's probably fair for a lot of different businesses and business owners. But uh, what we ask our people to do, again, we're seasonal and we're in 4 states. So our people have to travel a fair amount and they're in hotels for most of the time during our season, the applicators. And they have to be able to pass applicator licensing tests. I have to have a certain number of them that have their CDL license. So the biggest surprise and really constraint for me is in that first year. I closed on the business in June of 2020, and so that was kind of in the middle of our season.
Yeah.
And uh, we had an employee that had an issue and couldn't work, and we literally we had to shut down a crew that first year because I didn't have anyone else that I could put in that had the right credentials. So the people side of this, not only getting enough people, but having a strategy for how to get them licensed, having a mix of equipment so that you're not constrained just with needing CDL drivers. Those were probably the biggest surprises, and not the can we go find more business.
Got it. So, as you think about your next, let's just say 1 to 3 years or so, what's your number one point of growth or challenge, do you think, in achieving those goals?
Yeah, so it's still people.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's people in time, right? So for me, I've done all of the selling since I bought it in conjunction with the former owner, who I should have said, part of my deal in buying the company was the former owner stayed on with me full time for a while and as a consultant since. But for the majority of the time, I've done the selling since I've had it, and initially was doing much of the operations as well. We've hired an operations manager that's doing a fantastic job that is going to allow me to focus a little more time on strategy and on selling that I think will help with growth. And then it's finding enough of the right people that have that combination that I was talking about of licensings that will allow us to grow. And we've done some things differently since taking over with that. We've worked pretty hard to put together specific training programs that help with passing the applicator test, because they're not simple tests, and they shouldn't be, because again we're spraying herbicides on rights of ways, and so we
Uh,
need to understand the safety and how to do that. But what we've put together programs that will allow our guys to be able to study and have a higher pass rate on those tests. And then the second thing we've done is that we've found, initially we were trying to hire people with CDL licenses to learn to do our job. And if you're an over the road trucker and you come to us, what we do is very different. You're driving a truck for 10 miles an hour most of the day, and a lot of them didn't like it. So what we found was we've started finding guys or gals that really enjoy the work that we do and being outside. And then those that have invested in us in the off season, we've sent several of them to CDL school, and we pay for that school. So we've started training our own drivers.
yeah.
We've started trying to help with passing the applicators tests, and then it's just about finding the good people that are going to match the culture that we've built here.
That's wonderful that you're able to do this, building from internal rather than try to hire them from outside. And what you thought was the big gotcha has turned out to be a distraction because the observation of CDL drivers being comfortable with your quality of control as well as your skill sets, I could appreciate the subtle differences. So thank you for sharing that. You know,
Sure.
we have a big historical business coach in our world called Jim Rome, and he just passed away a year or so ago. Uh, but he often said something about you become the average of the five people that you spend the most time with. As you think about this, and what advice would you have to say to a business owner who wants to try it on their own?
Boy, don't. I've been extremely fortunate that in my life I've been able to build an amazing support staff of friends, of family, of coworkers, and um, to me, I lean on those people every single day. If you go all the way back to when I made the decision to do this, I had and have a wife that was so supportive of the idea, right? I mean, to many people, that probably sounded crazy to leave a 20-year career with a big corporate job to buy a company that sprays weeds. But she's been supportive every step of the way, and always has such great confidence in me. And then, I didn't have a ton of other business owners when I got into this to bounce things off of because it's not the world I lived in. But I have so many people that were either colleagues when I left or former colleagues that I had met along the way that are brilliant strategic thinkers and leaders that I constantly did and do bounce ideas off of. I think that any of us that set out to do it alone, we're leaving so many of the resources that are available to all of us untapped. We all have people in our lives that have experienced things we may not have, or just think of things differently than I do. And then the final part of that is sometimes you just need someone to tell you, yeah, that makes sense, and here's why. You need some reassurances. So I can't imagine having done this alone, and I certainly would never set out on a venture of business ownership without an awful lot of people that I could pick up the phone and call.
Nice. Thank you for that answer. So, Brad, kind of ending up our session here, it sounds like you've been blessed with some really, really incredible people in your life who've helped you along the journey. What would you like to say to them?
Well, again, I couldn't have gotten to this point without the help from all of them, and that's not just speaking about the Daltons. That's all the experiences that I've had before. I had the luxury of having two great parents that developed me and pushed me, and uh, they were fantastic. And again, all of the different people that I've worked with that I still stay in touch with, that take my phone call when I've got questions. I'm so appreciative of them. And then really finally, we talked about people being the biggest constraint in my business. The one thing I will say is we've got great people here. We've been able to build the team where we've grown the number of people we have, but we've got some extremely loyal people that have been here a long time. We've got people that have been here a year or two, and the people that work here, they sacrifice a ton, right? Like I said, especially the applicators, they're on the road for 7 months of a year, living in a hotel. So I just want them to know how much I appreciate their dedication to their craft, to the quality of work they do, to the Daltons, and to me. I mean, it makes it a pleasure to come to work every day.
Really, really thank you for saying that, as well as the reach out to your people. That's very special. So, Brad, it really has been a pleasure speaking with you today. So, thank you for being on my show.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks so much for having me. I've enjoyed the conversation, and Thank you.